Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, respected dignitaries, and our valued audience. So it's a great pleasure that I extend warm welcome to all of you to the third session of the Thesis Mastering Program 2025, which is organized by the Department of Accountancy and Finance, Faculty of Management Studies of Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. So, to begin with, I offer my heartfelt welcome to Professor Accountancy Janapalo, Dean, Faculty of Management Studies. Next, I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome to Professor D.A.I. Dayaratne, Professor in Finance from the Department of Accountancy and Finance, and as well, who will be serving as today's resource person for the session titled Literature Review, Strategies for Identifying and Synthesizing Research. And as well, it's my privilege to warmly welcome Professor T.U.I. Thisis, Head of the Department of Accountancy and Finance. And as well, on the same time, I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the presence of the Professor Jonathan Devasiri, the main coordinator of the Thesis Mastering Program of 2025. Finally, a sincere welcome goes out to all academic staff members, program coordinators, and especially to our enthusiastic undergraduates who are actively participating with us today, and your engagement is what makes this program truly meaningful. Now, it's my honor to introduce the speaker for today's session. So we are privileged to have with us Professor D.A.I. Dayaratne, a distinguished academic and a highly respected research professional. He currently serves as a professor in finance attached to the Department of Accountancy and Finance of Faculty of Management Studies of Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, and as well, he currently serves as the director for the University Business Scale Linkage Cell of the university. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Colombo, a Master of Science degree in management from University of Sri Jayawardenepura, and his first degree in financial management from Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. Over the years, he has held several key academic and administrative positions, including being the former dean to the Faculty of Management Studies, being the former head to the Department of Accountancy and Finance, and former director for the Center for Open and Distance Learning at CUSR. In addition to his academic accomplishments, he is a seasoned researcher with numerous publications in reputed journals, reflecting his strong command of research methodology and scholarly writing. So he's widely recognized for his contributions to academic research, making him an expert in the field. Complementing on this, he has demonstrated exceptional expertise in intellectual property management with advanced knowledge in areas such as patent cooperation, information search, patent drafting, technology licensing, and intellectual property policies. And as well, he has undergone prestigious international certifications and trainings, which is organized by leading global institutions. And at the same time, his international experience spans over the countries such as United States of America, Korea, Japan, Switzerland, and Nepal. With that note, with such a wealth of knowledge and global experience, he brings a unique perspective research methodology and academic writing, making him the ideal speaker for the vital session on literature review strategies. With that note, now I respectfully hand over the session to Professor D.A.I. Dayaratne. Sir, the platform is open to you now.
Okay. Can you unshare your file, please? Right. Okay, so thank you very much for the nice introduction, and also I must be thankful to the organizing committee for inviting me to talk to you on literature review. So I have been, I think, so I had 2.5 hours. Uh, I will try to manage because I have so many slides. I will, I may be a little bit fast, but right, I managed to cover entire the session, so within the given times, right? Okay. Doing a literature review. I think most of the audience are undergraduate students. So, so why do you conduct a literature review in your research? So you may have several objectives. In student's perspective, or you from your perspective, you have some purpose, right? Sometimes your supervisor will ask you to do, right? So we have to bring, at least you have to cite 10 or 20 journal articles or any other sources in your thesis. Therefore, that may be your objective. Or sometimes you want to submit a thesis so which extend about 50 pages or 60 pages. Then you want to have some, you want to have some more pages into your thesis. So normally, if you consider literary chapter, it extends about undergraduate level, it extends about 10 to 20 pages. So, then if you lose, if you couldn't do a literature survey and cite some literature, then your supervisor will blame you. And also sometimes, so you may have a fear of you will get a lower grade for your thesis. So more than that, uh, when you do your literature survey, so you have to make sure that so you do your you treat the relevant literature, right? So therefore the main purpose is to uh, distinguish what has been done from what needs to be done. Or no point of reinventing the wheel, right? If you do a research which has been already done, it's a waste of your time, your faculty's time, your supervisor's time, and also waste of your department's time, and also money, right? So therefore, main purpose of literature review is to distinguish what has been done from what needs to be done, right? Uh, so I think this short session, I have structured this session uh, on some sections. The purpose of literature review. So there should be some purpose. So before you do a literature survey, there should be a purpose, right? You should know what is the purpose of doing this literature survey. And how do you plan the literature? You have to plan it very well. So like when you construct a house or you build a house, you have to plan it out. And similarly, when you do a literature survey, you have to plan it out, right? So you have to plan it, plan the literature review process uh, very well, right? And then you should have some skills. What skills you should possess as researcher, undergraduate researcher. So that varies from master students and uh, research students. And as undergraduate students, you should have some set of skills to do a comprehensive, very rigorous literature survey, right? And analytical reading. So you have to practice analytical reading, right? And I will tell you how to read analytically, right? Then citation, indexing, and search services, right in the literature survey, right? So this is the uh, uh, structure of the today's session. Purpose of literature survey, as I mentioned earlier, so distinguish what has been done from what needs to be done, right? So if you don't conduct or don't do a rigorous literature survey, you cannot understand what others have done. Therefore, you have to very clearly differentiate what others have done and what needs to be done. That is one of the purposes of the literature survey and discovering important variables at the, so you all are now at the early stage of your research, right? So you don't know the subject, about the subject, right? Or the subject in and out of the subject. Sometimes you don't know subject jargons, what, right? Some some words, relevant words, right? Then so you can understand. So or discover some variables. What are the important variables? For example, sometimes so you know determinants of stock returns, right? So there may be several variables, right? Maybe uh, inflation, exchange rate, so macroeconomic variables. But you can find out new variables. You can explore new variables. What is a relevant variable? What are relevant variables? So what variables others have used in their research? Then you can incorporate into your research. And so this is very important, synthesizing and gaining a new perspective. So you have to come up with a new perspective. So you can read others' literature. So they have done several studies and they have done this. X has done this and Y has done this. And so my perspective, this is my perspective. This is so based on the previous literature, you have to come up with your own perspective. This is what I propose. And this is how I am going to uh, add knowledge to the existing body of knowledge, right? So synthesizing and gaining new perspective. You have to, so after reading literature survey, you have to uh, explore your own perspective. This is my research. So, right? Uh, Sorry, right. Okay, right. So, and identifying the relationship between ideas and practices. Sometimes, so there are some ideas. When it comes to some ideas cannot be implemented practically, right? So then the relationship between ideas and practices, right? And establishing the context of the problem. So you have to contextualize your problem, research problem within the thesis, right? Because the main objective is to address the research problem in your research. Therefore, you have to justify your research problem, right? So you have to contextualize your research problem with the literature. You have to support the research problem with the existing literature, right? So, and there are so many objectives or purposes, and what I have highlighted in red are important. Uh, Understanding the structure of the subject. Right? So when you do your literature survey or when you do a research, you should be able to how I am going to advance the knowledge in this subject discipline. Right? Understand the structure. So we have to understand the building blocks of the subject, right? How the subject has been emerged historically and from which point I am going to extend the knowledge or into the body of knowledge in that particular subject area, right? For example, if I consider the finance, so I get some example from the finance discipline because I am from the finance discipline. So what is structure of the subject? If you consider is finance, there are some theories emerged 1940s, value investing, and thereafter some theories emerged after during 1950s. So portfolio theory emerged 1950, and thereafter some asset pricing model, then dividend models, right? Efficient market hypothesis, right? You have to locate your research, right? So you have to locate your research in the body of literature, subject areas. For example, so you have identified a, gap in the uh, dividend models, dividend valuation model or dividend announcement, whatever, in the field of dividends, right? Then you have to, if you don't know the structure of the subject, right? So how the subject has been emerged, so you cannot locate, you have to locate your uh, research in the subject area. Then thereafter, from that point, so you can extend the knowledge, right? Therefore, literature review is very important to understand the structure of the subject, right? Um, and relating theories into ideas, relating ideas and theories to applications, right? So there are some so many purposes, right? There are some important purposes, especially you have to contextualize your research problem within the thesis. You have to contextualize the thesis within the or thesis, right? The problem, right? Right. Then so you have to plan it out very well, like you construct your house. So you have to plan it very well, right? So before, first thing is to define the topic, right? So if you cannot define the topic, you will unnecessarily read unnecessary stuff, right? So you will find from WW sources and you will read, so without any purpose. Therefore, so you have to very well define the topic. This is my topic, scope, right? So think of about the scope of the topic, right? So very well you have to understand this is the scope, right? So if you have not defined your scope, what happened? So you will unnecessarily spend your time and you will read unwanted literature, right? So definition of topic is very important, right? Think of and think about the outcome, right? So what you're going to do out of your search, right? So after doing your literature survey, so I'm going to, right, find this, right? So this is the outcome, right? And think about the housekeeping, right? Housekeeping, what should be, right? Excluded from the reading list, what should be included into the reading list, how you manage this, right? And plan the sources to be searched, right? Plan the sources to be searched. You have to plan it out, right? And search the sources listed, right? So we'll see how to define the topic. Right? So defining the topic, start with the general reading. Familiarize yourself with the topic. First, you should not at the very first stages, proposal stages, don't try to read journal articles, right? So you can understand, right? If you read journal articles, you can understand because so still you are very new, so you don't know subject disciplines, you don't know subject jargons, you are not familiar with the so because journal articles are written in high standard language, so you can start generally read. Even you can read some textbooks, right? Or you can consult some library or dictionaries. Go to the library and read some dictionaries. There are some subject-specific dictionaries, right? And encyclopedias, right? Um, and take notes on the concept used to take note which authors are cited, right? So at this stage, when you define the topic, so uh, you can have note, right? Because when you read, sometimes you will forget what you have searched in the early stages. Therefore, take some notes, right? So what I said and how you search, right? Take some notes and think about the shape of the topic so that you can map it out later stage, right? So what the shape of the topic, right? So whether the topic, whether there are extensive studies done on this topic, right? Or whether there's a the uh, lack of knowledge or dearth of knowledge in this topic, right? So therefore, you will visualize your topic, right? So without visualizing your topic, you cannot do a literature survey, right? So narrow down the topic and so you define the topic. If there are some difficult words, right? You can define the difficult words in a simple language, right? Right. So, so think about the scope of the topic, right? And decide the language. So normally, so you after doing a literature, literature survey, you will say that I have read, I have gone through all the literature, and this is the first study right, conducted on this topic, right? But is it correct? So you have only gone through the literature written in English language, right? So you decide the language normally. So you cannot you can understand other languages, and also so most of the materials are available in English. Therefore, your research will be limited to language. Then decide the language. Of course, the language would be the English, right? And also the what time frame or how far back you want to search, right? So when you start literature survey, what is the starting point? You have to very clearly show uh, uh, in your review, so what is the starting point of your literature survey, right? I have seen in some theses, undergraduate theses, so their starting point, the uh, starting point or the starting year of the literature is from 2010 onwards. Or sometimes there are no studies uh, done before, right? So you have to have a logical point to start literature survey, right? So whether it is maybe, so if you consider post-COVID, right? If you consider post-COVID, then your starting point may be the papers written, most of the papers written in post-COVID or post-liberalization. You know, the Sri Lankan market liberalized in 1977, right? So that is the logical point. So this is the starting point of my literature, right? So you have to show the starting point of your literature in your review, right? And what subject areas may be relevant. In addition to the finance, there may be some other subject areas relevant to your topic. Sometimes uh, some subjects like economics, statistics, right? So you can, right, decide, right? So think about the scope when you think the scope of your research or the search, right? Is, so what subject areas are relevant to my topic? Then you can read all these relevant materials, right? And make a list of terms and phrases you will, right? Then so after narrowing down topic and then you define the topic, you can, right, have a list of phrases or search terms, right? So for example, say determinants of stock returns, macroeconomic determinants of stock returns, right? So therefore, you can use some search terms when you are using uh, databases. You can use these terms, right? Then define the topic and narrow down the topic. Then you identify some search terms. So this is still, you have not started the literature survey, right? So you are before literature survey. So you have to do some homework, right? Still you are doing homework, right? Define topic, then narrow down topic, and what are the other subject areas relevant to my topics, right? And also what are the relevant phrases that I can use when I use databases to search my literature, right? So think about the outcome. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, you should know what at the end of the survey, right? So what you get, right? What I want to get out of the search, right? In your proposal, you might mention the purpose of your literature survey, right? In the proposal level, the purpose of literature survey is to see or make sure that the research question that you put forward are not addressed by other researchers, right? Then think about what you want to get out of the search, right? So maybe sometimes, so you want to develop a theory, right? So after doing this research, so you come up with a new theory, right? So and maybe sometimes emergence of subject area, right? So you're particularly interested in narrowing down how a subject emerges, right? Historical development of a subject, right? So chronological development of subject. That's also research, right? Um, and empirical findings or empirical contradictions, right? So depending on the outcome, right? So your search may difference, right? If it's theory, if you want to develop theory, you will mostly rely on theoretical papers. You will read theories, right? And if you want to narrow down or so write narrations about the emergence of a subject, right? Say, example, finance. You want to write how the finance subject emerged historically, right? So you will do a systematic review, right, or meta-analysis, right? Then you will mostly rely on the some theories, right, and some other. Mostly you will rely on the historical papers or seminal studies, right? So key authors, right? And empirical contradictions. If you are, so you outcome is to uh, explore the empirical contradiction of the subject, right? Or right contradiction among researchers. There may be some contradictions, right? So some researchers will say, for example, uh, capital asset pricing model in finance, right? So it is not relevant in current context. It was, right? The model was emerged in 1960s. Now, when it comes to contemporary world, so it is not relevant. Or some studies may have concluded that is relevant. So there are some contradictions, right? Then you will read the literature which are right, which have discussed or focused on empirical contradiction of capitalist pricing model, right? So then the purpose outcome, right? So the outcome based on the outcome, so the outcome of the thesis will moderate your expected outcome will moderate what you search or what you select into your reading list, right? And think about the housekeeping, right? So where to what is housekeeping? Right? So decides me to record what you find. So you will be working with a huge data set, right? Because if it is, even though it is undergraduate level, you will search and you will access to several databases, how to maintain these records, right? This is also important because at the sometimes, so you can find what you have saved in your desktop, right? After some time, you will forget, right? Then you can have your own unique way of maintaining record, right? You can have separate folders, so you can save your files by the name of author, or you can uh, file name as uh, years, right? Uh, so whatever the way, so right, you better keep because sometimes your supervisor will at the very first time your supervisor will reject. Don't read this paper, right? Right? And the same supervisor will ask you, right, after some time, so right? So read that paper. Then so you don't know where it is, right? If you have, right? If you have kept the record, if you have maintained the record, so you can very easily trace it and so you can read it, right? So and keep consistent records about what you search and how you search also, right? What phrases and keywords right? Use to search in the databases, right? Maybe subjects, say, if it has pricing, so assess pricing, two words, right? So then if you use assess pricing in the databases, you will get some output, right, onto your desktop, right? So therefore, so you have to maintain the records, how you search and also the and what you search, right? So these records will be useful when you are developing the methodology. At the beginning, sometimes same paper, you will be reading the same paper several times, several stages, right? So when you develop your proposal, you will read the same paper, and also when you write introduction, methodology, even conclusion, right? Therefore, maintaining the record is very important. So when you do a research, right? Plan the sources to be searched and prepare a list of likely relevant sources and informations, right? So after, so you can list down these are the relevant sources. Uh, so depending on your analysis or depending on your prior work, and then this at the early stage, still you are in the early stage, the research, right? So me, the subject, go to the library. Your best friend will be the librarian, right? So when you're doing your research, your best friend will be the librarian, right? So go to the library and inquire about, so I'm doing this research and this is my topic, and so how can I find materials? How can I access to databases? What databases are available? What in the university, right? So better go to the library and you can meet the librarian. He will help you a lot, right? And also the keep contact with your peers, right? Keep contact with your peers. Always your peers, good friends will help you, right? So how many of you share your topic with your peers, right? So share your topic with your peers, right? Your friend, right? So they will help you a lot. For example, say, so one of your friends attended a conference, right? So then you have share your topic with your friend, right? So then he or she will, right? One professor in the conference presenting a paper, right? Presenting a paper which is quite similar to your friend's topic, right? Then here, so after the conference, he will approach the professor and get the paper, and so he will bring the paper to you and give it to you, right? So therefore, so your friends will help you a lot, right? So keep contact with your peers and share your topic with your peers. And also you can share your topic with your girlfriend, boyfriend, or if you are married, wife, right? So they will help you, right? Even you can discuss your topic when you travel in the bus with the fellow passenger, right? So I am doing a research these days, right? So this is my topic. Yes, right? Sometimes, so maybe a person, right? Your fellow passenger may be sometimes Professor O, right, who is conversed in the subject matter, right? So then you can discuss, right? So always discuss your topic, right, with your peers. And search the source listed. So you can start search. So work through the list of sources you have made, right? So you have list down these are the sources, right? So these are relevant topics. These are relevant areas in addition to your main subject area. There are some other subject areas, right? And start with general source such as encyclopedia indexes, as I mentioned earlier, right? And so be systematic and thorough. So your stream should be systematic. Don't omit any paper, right? Um, and thorough review, right? What is systematic? So it is you have to take a chronological order, right? If you miss any important paper, there's no value of your uh, review, right? Systematically. Um, I have seen in some theses, so you have cited um, the paper, a journal article, say 2010 and after 2015, right? So I cannot find any paper during 5 years in the literature review chapter, right? So, so what happened then? So, right, during those 5 years, there may be a lot of studies. That means you have not done systematic review, right? From one paper to another. After one paper, what is the next publication, right? So after that, what is the next publications, right? So systematically you have to review literature and also thorough review, right? Thorough review. So you have to have an analytical perspective, right? Rather than telling, so he has done this and he has found this, right? So you have to have analytical or critical perspective, critical eye on everything you have read or you read when you do your literature survey, right? And make consistent references uh, at that. So this is the, so you are trying to compile the literature chapter. This is your literature chapter, right? Every page, there are about 10 to 15 pages in your literature chapter. You have to have citations and references, right? So I have seen some researchers, students researchers. So there's no any single citation in the entire page. That is not the literature review. If it is literature review chapter, at least there should be 5 or 6 citations, right? So you have to have some citations, right? If not, it is like journalistic. We call such writing as journalistic writing, right? So you have to cite. So this is literature chapter, right? So every page, at least there should be some citations, and you should have paraphrase, right? So I will show you later how to do paraphrasing, right? And you can use some techniques, some softwares and notes and some latest Setoro, right? So you can automatically export materials or the reading references into your text. So these are very simple things. So literature, there are two types of literature. So non-patent literature and patent literature. So you all are writing scientific research, academic research. So right? So you rely on the uh, non-patent literature, right? Non-patent literature. So what are the sources where you can access gather data? So you can access to conference proceedings after the conference. Uh, so we have ICMR, so we have proceedings, right? So you can access to proceedings and thesis technical report, right? So thesis, encyclopedia, trade journals, and books, monograph, and academic, right? So there are various sources where you can gather data, right? Uh, Now we are in the, right? So IT world, right? So it has enabled us to access to any material, right? So very quickly. And also if you are inventing, if you are innovating something, so you'll be reading patent literature, right? Sometimes, so even though you do a literature survey for academic purpose to write a paper or to write thesis, still patent literature also will be useful for you because in addition to the patents, most of the innovators, inventors, they make the publications, right? Maybe they make the publication. Therefore, so you can access. So these are pre-databases, right? Freely available. The USPTO, patent scope, commercial beta bases like Innovation Q plus, Durban, regional patent offices, right? So you can go to the internet and you can, right? Uh, you can use some search terms and you can write. But at this stage, undergraduate level, no need. But just you should know there are some paid literature and non-paid literature, right? So there are some differences. I'm not going to do this, and you can. So we don't have time to do some search activities. So when we do search activity, patent literature survey. So we use these search techniques, right? Boolean and other operators, catchword, wildcard, and truncations. You can also use these techniques for non-patent literature survey also. So when you're using databases like Emerald, Web of Science, or whatever, some other databases maintained by the universities, right? So you can very easily, so why we use this technique is to narrow down the output, right? So uh, to be very specific, right? To be very specific, to get very specific outcome, right? Uh, right. Then, as undergraduate, reviewing skills, you should have some set of skills as researcher, right? So maybe undergraduate student, master student, MP or PhD, right? So you should have prior understanding about the subject. If you don't know the subjects or the theories, you cannot do it, right? You cannot do your research, right? So that's why we are not asking you to, when you are in the first year, we don't ask you to write a thesis, right? So now, so you are in the third year or fourth year, now you have studied some subjects and you have gained some knowledge, right? So you have some prior understanding about theories, some subjects, and also you have written some assignments, you have submitted some, or sometimes you may have written articles to magazines, right? So you have some prior understanding, right? The prior understanding is necessary, right, to do good research and also to do a literature survey also, right? And diligence, motivation, you should be motivated to do something, right? Motivation to do a research, right? And concentrate, right, on the study, right? You should be motivated to do research, right? Yeah, right? If you, if there's no any motivation, you will, right? You won't come up with a very good thesis, right? Um, and also the skills justification. You have to justify everything, right? So why I selected this topic, right? You have to justify why it is worthwhile studying on this topic in the contemporary uh, time, so in the current time, right? And why I have chosen this research problem, why I have chosen these research questions, so why I have stated these research objectives, right? So why questions always, why I selected the sample, right? So always you have to justify, so all the actions, right? All the actions, right? From topic to conclusion. So you have to, right? So why question, right? So justify everything. So that is your talent, your skills, right? Ability to justify everything, right? So most of the times, you also at the Viva, I have seen the, so students fail to justify why I selected the sample. So why I selected this topic? If I ask, so why you selected this topic? Cannot answer, right? Cannot answer. So, right? So if you can answer why I selected this topic, you will, right? You will, right? So that is the research problem, right? So that's the research problem. Why? There's a reason to do this, right? So the reason, this is why, right? And scholarly conventions, so you have to follow scholarly conventions, right? So um, scholar, you have to demonstrate in your thesis scholarships, right? So we are awarding you A grade, B grade, or C grade for the scholarship that you have demonstrated in your thesis, right? So we are giving A grade, right, for the qualities or scholarly skills that you have gathered or achieved, right? Therefore, so you have to follow scholarly conventions and you have to put uh, quotations, right? And even punctuations are very important, right? So most of the time you avoid, you ignore punctuations, right? So at the undergraduate level, so your supervisors or examiners will tolerate to some extent, but when if it is PhD work, so they don't tolerate, right? Examiners will not tolerate very simple mistakes, right? So, but undergraduate level, so still you are not hard pro researchers, therefore there may be some flexibility, but still, so you have to demonstrate the scholarship, right? So scholarly conventions, right? Uh, if you put a table, you have to very impressively format it, right? And so you have to write the captions and then the source of the statistics. If you put a table, then source, right? Beneath of the, under the table, source, and then, right? Don't keep any words open-ended, right? So those are some, right? Um, features or some reflections of scholarship, right? So these are some skills. And when it comes to research degrees, so you know the difference between research degrees. Research degrees, there's no coursework, so you have to do a research entire period, right? So maybe uh, 2 years if it is MPhil degree. After your masters, you will do a MPhil degree, right? So no coursework. Entire 2 years dedicated for the research, and if it is PhD, right, 3 years. Specialization scholarship, right? So you have to demonstrate in the thesis. So you are specialized in scholarship, right? Sometimes so examiners will get it serious if you put a colon where semicolon is more appropriate. So it will be a serious mistake, right? If it is a this PhD word, right? So specialization. So and make a contribution. You have to make a contribution to the body of knowledge, right? Maybe to develop a new theory, that is contribution, or you do empirically, you uh, right test something and some issue, and you come up with a conclusion, right? Maybe contribution, right? And so you develop a new perspective, right? New perspective, right? Or you say existing body of knowledge research, right? Uh, in one, right? Or say not conclusive, right? Not conclusive, right? Then you can do a research, and right, you can bring or enhance the belief of the people, right? So you need to do more research, more and more research. So what you do is you bring the subject or the matter to to believe the people, right? Uh, if there are no evidences, there are a lack of evidences, so people will not believe, right? Therefore, so you can contribute in several ways. I will show you there are some ways of contributing to the knowledge in my preceding sections, right? And high level of scholarship, you have to demonstrate high level of scholarship, right? And also the ability to write a coherent volume of intellectual demanding work of significant length, right? How many of you can write, right? Right? One page, right? How long you will take to write a one page? Still, you are not familiar with to write, right? So at the very first stage, right? At the early stage of your research, so you're not familiar to write, right? Then uh, uh, when it comes to PhD level or the research degrees, so examiners will look at whether, right, you can write coherently, right? So as undergraduate students, you can master, right, your writing skills, right, gradually, right? So you cannot write or become a writer overnight. It takes some time, right? So these are some differences or different skills or scholarly conventions expected from undergraduates to master students. And again, what is scholarship? How to do a competent research, right? So do you know how to do a competent research? How to gather data, how to justify research problem, how to identify research problem, how to develop a hypothesis, how to collect relevant or the sample, right? So all these are the reflection of the scholarship, right? Read, interpret and analyze arguments and synthesize ideas, right? And make connection across disciplines, right? So all these um, are the reflection of your scholarship, right? So you have to always use your imagination, right? Use your imagination, right? So in your research, so this is your research, right? So you have to write your own imagination, right? You can no issue. You can right? Read other literature and write. You can paraphrase it and write it in your own, right, words, right? And show your how you contribute. That is very important, right? So you have to always show your contribution. This is right, your imaginations, right? And key elements of this, good scholarship is integration, right? How many how do you integrate your research? So you have to integrate your research problem with the topic and integrate your research problem with the uh, hypothesis, research objectives, and also integrate your research problem with the um, methodology, integrations, right? So don't place your research problem in isolation, always integrate with other sections, right? Other sections. That is also a scholarship, ability to integrate your research, right? Don't keep anything in isolations, right? Or so you have to always integrate problem, hypothesis, research questions, and sample selections, right? Even conclusion, right? Integrate your conclusion with the objective, right? You have to go back, refer back. So when you write the conclusion, so go back to research questions, hypothesis, and objectives, right? Then integrate your conclusion with this, right? And according to Philip, you can originate demonstrating the originating the research is not that much difficult, right? If you read this, right? So don't worry, right? So doing empirically based work that has not been done before, right? So any empirical work, right? Uh, that has not been done before, right? Sometimes you add one variable. You use one variable, right? Uh, so nowadays, the tariff, US tariff, right? United States, US has imposed tariffs on countries. The impact of tariffs may impact, it will impact on the stock prices, right? So you can consider it as macro variable, right? Uh, that will be new, right? So you add with some justification, right? You have to justify. With the justification, you add one variable, right? So that is new, right? And using already known ideas, practices, approaches, but with new interpretation. You are giving new interpretation to knowledge, right? So that is new, right? So no issue, right? So what has been concluded as wrong, you go on to say it is correct. That is new, right? After your research, right? That is new, right? So bringing new evidence to bear all issues or problems. Outdated, right? You bring that has not been done before, right? So develop your own perspective, right? You develop your own perspective with some justifications after doing your literature survey, right? So that is also new, right? So applying something, right, done in another country, one's own country, your own country, that is new, right? So you can do replicate a topic, right? So because when you replicate, you use data from Sri Lanka, right? So different set of data, right? So you can use same methodology, even same topic, no issue, right? So that will be novel, right? So no issue. Applying a technique usually associated with one area to another, right? So you can use one dominant methodology in the field of medicine into finance, right? Applied research, right? Experimental research studies are conducted in medicine. So you are right applying the same methodology in the context of finance. That is new, right? So you borrow new methodology from another discipline. That is new, right? So being cross-disciplinary by using methodology, different methodologies, right? So you can add adding new to knowledge in a way that has not been previously done, right? So, right. So maybe in terms of adding new variable and so new data set and new methodology, right? So you develop new methodology, and you sometimes you modify data, right? Or you relax one assumption. Some studies they have made some assumption. You relax one assumption and do research, right? So that is novel, right? So novelty is not a big issue when it comes to undergraduate studies, right? Uh, but when it comes to masters and PhDs, you have to contribute to the body of knowledge. You have to, right, add knowledge to the body of knowledge, existing body of knowledge, right? Right. Then what is analytical reading? You have to practice analytical reading, right? So always, uh, so you can read all the papers, all the articles that you get from the internet or from your search, right? So you have to practice you have to skim through the test, right? Or sometimes read the abstract. Read the abstract. If it is not relevant, right, don't read it again. What happened? If you read, so you will be given very limited period of time to do your research, right? So within 6 months, you have to read the literature, collect data, analyze, and right, write the thesis and submit it. So, right, so it's a very right, headache, right? So it's a very big task, right? So uh, if you hang on the reading and literature, right, 3 months or 4 months, you won't be able to submit the thesis. Therefore, so you have to be selective. You have to be selective in reading the literature. Most relevant, you have to collect and most relevant literature, right? So, for example, you use some search terms, say assess pricing models, right? So you have selected one database. So you got 100,005 output, right? 1,005 article. How can you read all this? So you have to read all this because finally you say, so no one has done this research, right? How can you say that without reading all the literature, even non-English literature? You have to read papers written in other languages to say that no one has done this, but right. So every student says, right. So no one has done this, but you have right gone through only limited and or you have read uh, only the articles written in English, right? Uh, then how can you read all these articles, right? So 1,005 output is 1,005, right? So, but you have to read. If not, you cannot establish the novelty, right? So you have to say this is new. No one has done this, right? How can you do this? So you can right get at least read the abstract, and you can skim through. Also, there are some search techniques, Boolean truncations, wildcards. So you can narrow down to your search further, right? But you have to practice this skimming through the test. When you read, normally we tend to skim through the list of all that and pick up some details, right? Uh, then, so you can select some, right? So relevant papers, and later you can go in detail, read in detail, right? And purpose of the reading, when you read, it is not the purpose of put a citation, right? So purpose is not, right? Because your supervisor will say, or examiners will say, you have to have at least 20 citations in order to get 10, 20 marks or 10 marks, right? That's not the purpose, right? And so establishing novelty is one purpose, that's the main purpose. And also in addition to that, when you read a paper, you can see, so what you can grab, right? Or extract from the paper, how they have developed their arguments, so you can learn, and how they have given their conclusions and motives, right? And how they have tackled with the research issues, right? Ethical issues, right? Ethical clearance, right? And style justifications, right? So if you read a paper, you can borrow a lot of things, right? You can extract a lot of things. Then you can use extract it for your thesis also. You can reflect in your work also, right? So when you read, always try to, right? Uh, extract or grab the arguments, how they have developed the motives of writing, right? And how they have tackled the ethical issues, right? then you can also follow these, right? You can extract a lot of things when you read a journal article, right? And so deduction, induction, research approaches, theory, start with the theory, hypothesis, observation, and confirmation, right? So then induction, observation, pattern, tentative hypothesis, and theory, right? So depending on the approach, the approach will moderate what you search, what you read also, right? So depending on the approach, you will mostly rely on theoretical papers, so right, other empirical studies, right? Uh, so when you develop a theory, induction, right? So observation, pattern, tentative hypothesis, and theory. You are going to develop a theory. Then you will associate the other relevant theories when you develop a theory, right? So the approach will moderate what you read, right? Uh, and also the mapping ideas. So you can the main use of mapping a topic. Uh, you can So there are some mapping techniques. You can use feature maps, tree construction, content maps, taxonomies, and concept maps, right? So one I have demonstrated, I have taken one for example, feature maps. So when you read a paper, have a table like this, right? Uh, Author, Sharp 1964. So what is the theory standing point? Assess pricing under risk, right? But what theory he has proposed, right? And what evidences he has used, right? So when the Sharp writes his paper as his pricing, right? So what evidences he has used? So other previous evidences, right? So based on a portfolio theory, right? Portfolio theory, evidence, right? So after, there was some vacuum, right? There was a gap in the portfolio theory. Sharp filled this, right? Vacuum, right? So, and then argument, assess pricing under risk. Main argument, what is the main argument of the paper? If you read a paper, so extract the argument and, right, have it to table, right? And what concepts or analysis, right? And what is the co-citation? If you get a paper, research paper, so you can understand what is the co-citation. How do you identify co-citation, right? If I write a paper, right, any paper, you can find some co-citations, right? How do you find the co-citations? So you have cited in several places, right? Several places, right? From introduction to right conclusion sometimes. So you very frequently cite some papers when you write your thesis, right? So those may be uh, co-citations to your study or your research, right? So likewise, you can have feature maps. Then very easily you can, so after say, so you have taken about 30 or 40 or 50 articles into this table. Then you can later you can write your chapter, right? You can write your chapter, right? So when you then you have to have you can have you have to write critical literature review, right? Critical literature review, thorough literature review, critical, right? Critical means not that Dayaratne has done this research and he has concluded that and that, not that, right? So you have to compare, contrast, what are the strong points of the paper, what are the deficiencies of the paper, how it can be improved by next researchers, right? That is the critical review, right? For deficiencies and also the strong point, you can highlight strong point, right? And how the future researchers can improve, right? So it's a critical review, right? You can use any other mapping technique. This is one technique you can use, right? Mapping technique. So I skip this. So this is some stages and right. So stage you are in the process and sources and outcome, right? So I will share these slides. If you need, you can read, right? Uh, so these are the so there are sources I have listed here: Science Direct, Emerald, Ideas, Web of Science, College. There are some other databases, so where you can search literature, right? So you have to define the topic, then narrow down it, and decide what search terms I used in my uh, search literature survey, right? So you can use these databases. And so parameters of your search, so you can use these parameters, what the language, of course, English, right? You can select language in these databases, and subject area, you can select accounting, and even you can further specify your search, manufacturing sector, right? Geographical area, Asian country, Asian region, and publication period 10 years, and type maybe referee journal, right? So then, so with these terms, you can search in these databases, you will get some output, right? Also, you can use uh, some search techniques, right? In order to narrow down further specific output of your search, right? Uh, and so this is one exercise I did, but I couldn't conclude. I did. I wanted to see the global literature or the global findings, right? uh, on capital assets pricing model. Then I use some databases and started this process, right? So number of studies, I use CAPM as terms, capital assets pricing model. If in Science Direct, I got 3,673 number of studies found, and I filtered out relevant, right? uh, studies, that is 3,000 plus amount, and then total uh, 426, right? So I have, but I couldn't complete this. This is a systematic review, right? So uh, if you are interested in looking at the conclusion, general conclusion on a subject, general conclusion, right? So what people believe on this, that is general conclusion, right? And after literature survey, you can do this exercise, right? So this is what I did in my thesis, PhD thesis. So I gathered and read more than 5,500 articles, but I got most relevant articles to do this exercise, right? So my study was, I tested some models, asset pricing models, two models in the context of when the when a economy is exposed to crisis, in a crisis situation, whether these models work as it is, right? So then uh, after the review, I selected some relevant papers, and I did so. Then I could very easily show where my research locates, right? Current study, right? So after your literature survey, you can also do this, right? This kind of pictorial reflection, all right? That may be the outcome of your literature survey, right? The readers will very clearly understand how you have derived the literature gap, right? So you can very easily show your literature gap if you use a similar type of right mapping, right? Uh, After the review, right? There are some do's and don'ts. When you do your literature survey, what are do's? Do these, right? So identify and discuss landmark studies on the topic. So most of the students, what you do is, because your supervisor is asking you to, you should have at least 20 citations. Whatever you get, you read and cite. So no, that's not the way, right? So identify and discuss Key landmark studies. What are the landmark studies? Key papers. If your topic is on portfolio theory, right? Right? So based on portfolio theory. So if you have not cited Harry Marco's paper, 1952, right? Portfolio selection. So what is the validity of your paper, right? And there are some giants. So if you take a subject, so there are some giants, key contributors, right, to the discipline, right? So there should be some, you have to cite, right? Because examiners will go through it and say, if it is portfolio theory, yes, you have not read uh, right? Harry Marco's paper, father of modern portfolio theory, right? So you have to cite landmark studies. Sometimes you may, right? You find difficult is to find, but some other means you have to find it, right? Find it and read it and cite appropriately, right? So you have to, so include as much as, right? Up-to-date materials as possible, up-to-date material, right? So I have seen in some theses, right? After this, the latest cited article is 2010. Thereafter, no, there's no, right? There's no paper. So what happened to the knowledge, right? So up to date. So example, sometimes your submission date is tomorrow, right? Tomorrow you have submitted and you have already got it bound, hard bound, and so you're ready to submit. But when you are browsing the internet, right? You cited one paper, right, published yesterday. So quite relevant to your paper, quite relevant to your topic, right? And also useful, very useful, right? Then what you do? What did you do? Because tomorrow's deadline, but you have got printouts and ready to submit, right? Get the paper and read it and right, paraphrase appropriately in the relevant place and submit, right? So include as much as up-to-date material. If not, right, it's not thorough review. It's not thorough review, right? Because you have omitted latest knowledge. So you have, right, overlooked latest knowledge. Therefore, you have to cite latest papers, right? Check spellings, right? So you most of the time you misspell the authors in some English names, right? So you misspell. What happens? If someone wants to check the paper, read the paper, then they will search by using the name given in your thesis, right? But there's no such a right author. If you have misspelled authors, that's also important. Sometimes the examiners will, right? Uh, they may want to read the paper. Then so they cannot find it, right? And critically evaluate the material and show you analysis. Always so you have to analyze critically. This is my analysis, right? So this is my analysis. Show your analysis, right? Use extracts, illustration, and examples to justify your analysis and so arguments. Always use example. For example, when you write your thesis, write for example, right? So you can further elaborate, right? So you give your voice in your thesis, right? Examiners like to see your voice rather than voices of others, right? So therefore, so you have to make your voice in your thesis, right? So be analytical, evaluative, and critical, and show this is your analysis, right? So be analytical perspective, evaluate the literature, and critical review, right? And so you will review. So manage the information that you review. Producers have a system for records management, right? So you can have separate folders or right. Uh, Manage your record. Sometimes what happens is, say, you bring your second chapter to your supervisor. The supervisor say, so this is not written well, so he rejects it. What happened then? And again, sometimes, right? Uh, the same supervisor will ask you to write this chapter. This section is important. This paper is very important, right? Then don't throw away, have a dustbin file always, right? Don't delete totally, even though your supervisor rejected your writing, what you have brought to your supervisor, and keep a dustbin file and keep it. Because in a day, the same supervisor will ask you to write or bring the same, right? So therefore, don't delete it, right? Keep it in a dustbin pile always, right? Uh, so make your review worth reading and by making yourself clear, systematic, and so remember you are writing for the readers, right? At least your thesis will be read by two people, right? Therefore, so it should be interested, right? So if I read one page, I should tend to, I should be motivated to go to next page, right? Have a link, right? Uh, Between paragraph and even between chapters, right? So have a link. You can take a kind of a story writing style, right? It's a story. You are writing your research story. It is a story, right? If it is a story, read examiners very much like to read the stories, right? Make sure worthwhile, worth reading by making yourself clear, systematic, and coherent. Right? Before you submit, you go through and see whether you can understand what you have written, right? So if you cannot understand what your thesis, so what you have written, how about others? How can others understand it, right? Therefore, so very simple language, right? So this is very simple, right? So don't take it serious. Don't use subject jargons, right? Jargons words, right? uh, Use very simple language very nicely, right? Write it. So omit classic as seminal work. Don't miss important work and discuss outdated, right? Or only all material, right? Don't discuss all material, right? Up to date material, right? So misspell names, okay, right? Don't use subject jargons or discriminatory languages, right? Discriminatory language, languages which create some communal tensions, disharmony, right? Political, right? Sensitive words, don't use this discriminatory language, right? Uh, because it will be badly affected or it is not it's not it's not accepted by the academic community, right? So therefore, writing don't use these languages, right? So uh, and don't believe everything written also, right? If you believe everything written, no need to do research. Why do you do, right? Research. Have a critical eye on everything written, right? Uh, so you have to critically evaluate, right? So what are the shortcomings, what are strong points, and how that can be improved. You can give your suggestions also, right? How that can be improved, right? So not just criticisms while criticizing. So you can see. So this paper would have been, it would have been good if they have incorporated this and that, right? So can uh, don't believe everything written, right? So because if you believe everything, no need to do research, right? Only produce a description of what the content of what you have read, right? Don't give description, right? And don't make silly mistakes, spelling mistakes, right? You can give it to a language editor before you submit it, or you can use even language check. You can use, or you can internet, right? So even AI you can use, right? To check your language, right? And assessing criteria. So you should know how your thesis is going to be evaluated, right? So how it is evaluated, your thesis, right? There are some criteria. If excellent work, complete work, and deficient work, right? So if you want to get an A pass for the thesis, right? What features, right? What qualities it should have, right? Aims, objectives, and justification, right? So you have to, in your thesis, you have to write aims, what is the purpose, and objectives and justifications, right? How you justified everything, as I mentioned earlier, you have to justify from topic to conclusion, everything. So clear aims, able to be operationalized, explanation of the topic with justification using literature, full awareness. You demonstrate full awareness about the literature, right? Because if you cannot demonstrate you are aware, I am thorough in this subject disciplines, right? Uh, uh, then examiners will not get a good view on the thesis, right? But if you have read and cited, and if you have demonstrated full awareness of the previous study, previous work, then you will get an A pass, right? And complete work, clear aims, objectives, acceptable, right? Justification with identification of some topics. So some fairly good, right? So maybe C pass or sometimes C minus. So it's B minus, right? Deficient work. Aims and objectives not clear, topic not justified, lack of focus. The focus, right? You are not focused well your research, right? Out of focus. Fail, E, F grade, right? F grade. And methodology and data collections also choice of methodology explained, right? So this is not the only methodology that can be adapted to do this research. There are some so various methodology, but I have selected this methodology, right? Uh, choice of methodology explained in comparative terms, right? So discuss the strength and weakness of previous methodologies, data collection method, right? A grade. Full marks, you will get full marks, right? And literature review, yes, thorough thorough review of literature, systematically analyze variables linked to methodology, right? So you have to uh, link your literature to methodology, right? Sometimes, so your literature review will guide you to select the methodology, right? You can, while uh, compiling the findings or citations, you can also learn methodologies, right, used by other researchers, right? And style and presentation, including use of graphic and math, right? So very impressively, you can format the graphic figures and chart, right? Uh, so this is so these are some aspects that we look at when we are evaluating your thesis, right? And so I skip this and how to I cannot see. So evaluate the structure of your literature. So before you submit, you can evaluate the structure. So you can go through this checklist, right? Does your literature review have a clear title which describe the focus of your research rather than just saying literature review, right? You can go through the checklist, right? Have you explained precisely how you search literature and the criteria used to select this, right? Um, so you can go through this checklist. I'm not going to explain all. And does your literature review lead your reader into subsequent sections and right? So checklist, right? Make sure before you submit your thesis, go through this checklist, right? Uh, have you shown how your research questions relate to the previous research reviews? And have you assessed the strengths and weakness of previous research review, right? Have you been objective in your discussion and assessment of other people's research, right? So go through this checklist and before you submit your thesis. So what is a literature survey then, right? So what's the metaphor? So literature survey is a nice, right? It is a literature review is the nice party frock of your thesis, right? If the examiner sees that you have chosen the right prop for the chosen occasion, they are more likely to want to have a drink with you, right? It goes without saying your frock should be freshly ironed or have no stains on it. Even better if it matches with your handbag and shoes, right? Uh, so this is a so this metaphor says some, right? How your literature review should be, right? So it should match with other sections, literature, analysis, and even research problem and more, right? Right. So if you have any question, you can post it to. So later we have you like some Q&A sessions. Writing the literature survey. So after again, I will use some writing some clues how to write the thesis, right? Or the literature chapter, right? So very difficult task, right? Writing is the most difficult because when you will come to this stage say if you are given 6 months, you will start writing your thesis in the last month, right? So no, then within 1 month or maximum 2 months, you have to finish this, right? So if you are not familiar with writing, right? Writing very coherently, right? Grammatically, right? So it will be difficult task, right? So uh, there are some hints, right? So don't wait to write till you read everything, right? Write as you go along. Because you might, right? You will split the given time into some period, say, uh, I will read 2 months. I will read 2 months, and next 2 months I will write. It will never happen, right? It will never happen, right? Because so our memory is volatile, right? So you cannot remember. So what you read today, right? After 1 month, you cannot remember it, right? So therefore, have template, right? For you have chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, right? So have a template and so write in the relevant section. So as you read, right? If it is relevant to say. Um, so you are reading a paper, and it is the methodology is very relevant to your methodology. Oh, then you can right have note write on the methodology chapter, right? The template, right? Later you can modify it and you can correct it, right? Therefore, so right from right first day onwards, right? Have a template and write throughout the thesis, right? Right throughout the thesis, even though you are doing a literature survey. So right throughout the thesis from introduction to conclusion, right? Right. Then assignments, so normally so every chapter you have to write 5 chapters. So chapter uh, some content or the format of some other chapters except per literature chapter. So you know the what should be in the chapter 1? Introduction, problem, objectives, research questions, significance, limitations, right? And chapter 3 also right? Right? So even the faculty has given a rough guideline, right? So methodologies, data collections, and some data collection issues, right? Operationalization, and right, so description of your variables, right? And chapter 4, so you will use you will analyze, right? You tables and you interpret and what is the format for literature chapter? There's no very obvious, right? Very clear format for the literature chapter, right? Of course, no need, right? So that depends on the research that you do, right? Therefore, there's no format, but you have to do a thorough and critical literature review, right? So then assignments for literature review, you will do is producing a standalone review. That is right. So you will do a systematic. You want to know. You are interested in knowing that a knowledge on a topic, right? Then you will do a systematic review. Ascertain the state of art of a subject. Ascertain the state of art. The then chronological narration of literature, right? So that is one thing. That's also research, right? So you can do a literature survey itself. Literature survey itself is a research, right? Uh, and a literature review for research proposal, right? So you will, to some extent, it won't be a comprehensive literature survey, but in order to justify what you propose, you have to do some research. So what the purpose of literature review in the proposal at the proposal level is to make sure proposed research questions have not been answered by previous researchers, right? So you have to make sure at the proposal level, right? So novelty. So this, right? Then so this research question has not been addressed by previous researchers, right? So then you have to do some literature survey at the proposal level, right? And a literature review section in the finished research, such as thesis or dissertation, right? So locating the research in the existing knowledge, right? Then this is what you are doing, right? So you will write a literature section, right? It doesn't mean you have to limit your literature into literature chapter. Literature should be throughout from introduction to conclusion, but you have to have a separate chapter on literature review to demonstrate the novelty and literature gap, right, of the discipline, subject discipline, right? A literature review has two elements, right? So there are two elements. First, it should concisely summarize the findings, right? What you do is you summarize the findings, right? Or claims made by different authors that have emerged from prior research efforts on subjects, right? So different claims, right? Different findings, right? Then you summarize very uh, precisely, you summarize, right? And what is the second? A literature review should reach a conclusion, right? So after literature survey, you have to come to a conclusion, right? So what is your conclusion about how accurate and complete the knowledge is? So you have to make a judgment, right? If the knowledge is accurate, no need further research on this area, right? And then how accurate and complete that knowledge is. It should present your judgment about. So then what's your judgment, right? What's right, what's wrong, what's inclusive, and what's missing in the literature, right? So after doing the literature survey, so you have to make this judgment. Sorry. Uh, wait, wait. Sorry, I cannot. Stuck. Can you can you view my slides? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Thing is stuck. It's stuck, Unan.
We can see the slide that is establishing novelty.
Yeah, wait, I will unshare and share it again. Right. Second, the literature review should, right, reach a conclusion about how accurate and complete the knowledge is. It should present your judgment about what is right in the current literature, right? What is right, what is wrong, right? And what is inconclusive, not conclusive, right? Uh, there are, right? There's a dire need of further research, right? Inconclusive, and what's missing in the literature. in the existing, right? So then you have two elements. First, summarize, and second, make a judgment, right? And classify the review. So what areas of consensus and near consensus, right? Right? Or areas of consensus represent conventional wisdom about the topic. What is conventional wisdom? Conventional wisdom is what we know, right? What we know about a subject, right? What we know about a phenomena, right? That is conventional wisdom, right? And areas of consensus, right? Or near consensus, right? But not conclusive. Areas consensus represent conventional wisdom, right? What we know. Conventional wisdom is what we know on the subject, right? And areas of disagreements or debates. So what disagreements, right, among researchers, right? So there are some disagreements and also debating. Still topic is debating, not conclusion, right? Consensus about what is correct, right? Still, so researchers are arguing. They are arguing what is correct, right? So a lot of disagreements are there. Then you can do research on these areas, right? And gaps. There may be aspects of topic that have not been examined yet, right? So you can identify some gaps, right? So after reading literature, you can understand what we know, right? And what is debating, what is inconclusive, what is so what disagreements researchers have on the topic, right? And what are the gaps available, right? So there may be aspects of a topic that have not been examined yet, right? Classify the review, right? After review, uh, you should be able to classify your review. How do you establish the novelty, right? So you have to establish the novelty of your thesis research. Once you have identified where there is conventional wisdom, where there are debates, right, and where there are gaps, you can use literature review to describe what will be your contribution, right? Contribution to knowledge of your research, right? Or proposing and why it will be of interest to your intended audience, right? Then you, after your literature survey, you will establish what we know, conventional wisdom, right? What is, right? So, so what areas still being debated by researchers? So where there are gaps, you can use to be able to very clearly visualize the gaps. If you have done a very good literature survey, you should be able to visualize the gap, right? And you will know what you know, right? What others have done, right? Then you can very easily establish the novelty. Then from which point I should, right, start the research and how I should contribute to the body of knowledge, right? Then if you believe conventional wisdom, what we know, no need to do research, right? Do you believe, so, right? If you believe, or if the conventional wisdom's sufficient or conclusive, right? So no need to do research on the subject area again, right? 100% believe people, right? Because why we do research? To advance the belief, right? To increase the belief, the probability of belief of people, right? So after doing, say, example, if you uh, people believe 80%, right? So after your contribution, you can increase, enhance the belief of people, what they believe, right? To some extent, right? So therefore, if you believe conventional wisdom, what we know is correct, no need to do research on that area, on that subject, right? So evaluating the overall state of knowledge on a topic, so you can, right? So assumptions, logic, evidence, there are methodologies, right? So how do you inform the gap? You have to inform the gap in your thesis, right? Inform the gap to readers, right? If your goal is to fill the gap, you identify your review, right? So you would state like this: researchers have studied A, B, and C, right? Previous researchers have studied A, B, and C, which are relevant to the problem X, right? Relevant to the problem X, right? So they have studied A, B, C. But they have not studied D. They have not studied D, which is also relevant to understand or solving problem X, right? So that's how you have to inform the gap, right? So after literature survey, A, B, C, D, they have focused on this, but same problem, right? Same problem. Same problem can be addressed in different ways by using different methodologies, right? Uh, Therefore, so you can, at the end of the literature survey, you can write or inform the gap to the readers, right? The problem, so this is very quick, very often students come and say, sir, so there's no literature on this topic. Then I say, it's very good, me. It's very good if there's no literature, right? So that is very good, very, right? The problem of too few sources and the problem of too many sources, right? So students are facing two issues. I have no literature on the topic, and some say, so there are a lot of studies. How can I select the relevant studies, right? Because there's no literature, but still you have to cite at least 20. If not, you will lose marks allocated for literature, right? In the evaluation scheme, right? How do you tackle too many and too few sources, right? So this is very common issue faced by the students, right? Right. So your effort is say you come up empty. So this is not a wasted time of your effort, right? So you come up with empty. In your search, you found nothing, right? You found nothing. Still, right? It's not waste, right? At least you knew, right? No previous studies on this, right? If you can report that right? Serious search uncovered no study that examine your research question, right? Then you have largely demonstrated that your research will fulfill the contribution to the knowledge, right? Contribution knowledge, novel's approach, right? There's no prior art, prior studies, right? So new, right? So very good, right? Uh, that's novel research, right? But still you want to cite, right? Still you want to, right? Still leaves the problem of what to discuss in literature. Then so if there's no, so supervisor says it is good, right? But how can I write literature? Because there is no literature, my thesis get fail mark, right? So that is the issue. Do you have some issue, some solution to this problem? Do you have some solution? Too few sources. There are two tires, right? Tier one. So you are concentrated with studies that directly address your proposed research questions, right? Tier. Then so you can address, right? You can or concentrate on the studies which focus on your research proposed research questions. Then, right? So you can get some to search the terms and do the search in the databases. So you will get some articles if you focus or in the tier one, So you look at your research questions. You may have 1, 2, 3, 4 research questions. Get some search terms on the research questions and use in the databases. So you will get some articles, right? And tier 1 and tier 2. So you might consider, right, items that have a theoretical perspective, right? Theoretical perspective you want to explore in your research, right? So you want to explore in your research, even if no one has applied the theory to your specific question, it is still appropriate to discuss keyword, right? Keywords, right? Keywords, right? That have developed the theory so that you can explain why it is, right? It might provide a good perspective for analyzing your topic, right? Tier 2. So you can read some, focus on some theories, right? Focus on some theories in the tier 2, right? Tier 1, focus on research questions, use some search terms, get some search terms from the research questions, and do the search, you will get some papers, right? So consider theoretical perspective, right? So too many sources. Other issue is, so you have selected very common general topic, and so you got from all databases, so more than 5,000 output, right? How you tackle with too many literature, right? Then once you consider literature in this second tier, so the outer circle, you are likely to encounter problem of too many, right, sources, right? The number of potential relevant publications, especially once you begin considering well-developed areas, right? Well-developed areas. So you, right? So normally you get more output, right? In your search. How to tackle too many sources? Tackling too many sources, focus on the leading authors. Then you can be selective, right? Don't try to select all that relevant articles. Try, right? Focus on good authors, dominant authors, seminal papers, right? Famous authors, right? And focus on the recent studies from high prestige, high quality journals, right? High quality journals, right? So leave out all other literature. That's right. No issue, right? Uh, and focus on studies that are most relevant to help to your research questions, right? So most relevant articles to your research questions. You can eliminate articles which are not quite relevant to your research questions, and then focus, right? Focus on leading authors and studies, so high uh, or index journals, right? Um, and the focus on relevant uh, to your research questions, right? Then you may narrow down or the your or you will exclude some papers. You will include most relevant papers into your reading list, right? Then you can read in details and do the survey, literature survey, right? Too many sources, too few sources, right? And so organizing literature chapter, you can, right? Most of the students facing some issues, how to organize the literature chapter, right? There are several ways of organizing literature chapter, right? Like other chapters, so you can have a logical order, grouping individual studies into large camps or schools of thought, right? So you can start, right? You start writing the uh, chapter, right? Or maybe chronologically, right? Schools of thought, right? So one school of thought in one section, another section, and so on, right? Grouping individual studies into large camps or schools of thought, and then you can have some subsections, and you can write the literature chapter. So I have seen in some theses, there's no subsections. You have to have subsections. Normally, at least in one page there should be subheading, two subheadings, right? Even one page may be too long for the readers. So the readers get bored, right? Reading lengthy paragraph, long pages without subheadings, right? So then you have to logically subdivide the chapter two, right? Different theories. So then different theories. Theoretically, you can narrow it down, right? Narrative. You can write the narrative or chronologically the theories. Some theories emerge 40s, theories emerge, some theories may have emerged 40s, 50s, 70s, and you can take that order. Or methodological advancements, right? How the methodology is been advancing, right? In this area, right? From 1952 up to date, right? So there may be a lot of advancements with the advent of the computer technology, a lot of facilities, there are a lot of databases, there are a lot of statistical tools available, right? Then methodological order, right? So different policies, then policies. If you are writing a policy paper, right? Then policy regimes, right? Different regimes, right? So you can have some important regimes and write the chapter, right? So therefore, there's no logical or the hard rule on this. That defense, you can have your own logical order, but it should have uh, some academic rigor, right? Uh, yeah. So this is I'm not going to write. So so if you do good research and if you write, right, your writing reflect who you are, right? So we are giving a grade to you, not to your thesis, right? So if I read the thesis, we are reading you, your academic uh, competencies, right? So therefore, your thesis reflects who you are, right? Therefore, you have to take it seriously, right? Uh, whether you are a scholarly person, you are a competent person, whether you have acquired the knowledge during this learning process, right? So all reflects, right? So your first year work also reflect in the thesis, right? Final year thesis, right? The work volume you have gathered, the skills you have gathered during your university career, right, will be reflected in your thesis, right? Therefore, they don't take it lightly, take it seriously, right? Because you will take your thesis to interviews, right? You will show it, this is my thesis. Very proudly, you will say, this is my thesis, I have written on this. And then if the the board, sometimes they may detect some errors, right? So then it's not good for the university and also it's not good for you also, right? So therefore, do it carefully and take it serious, right? And so major tasks in writing, so the so major tasks, when you are ready to write up your work, you have major tasks, right? So these are some issues you face, right? How do you adequately, appropriately describe, explain, and justify what you have done and found? Sometimes you may get a feeling that what I have reviewed is not adequate, right? Not appropriate, right? So that is your talent, right? And describe, explain, and justify what you have done and found, right? So these are major issues, major tasks that you have to tackle with, right? So when you write, right? Adequacy, how do you measure the adequacy of my, right? Your review, right? And whether it's appropriate, I have cited relevant or the appropriate papers, right? So those are some issues, right? Uh, so guidance for writing, how can you write literature, how can the literature review be used to justify the topic, right? So you can justify the topic with the literature survey, right? Support. So people, a lot of people have done on this research on this. Therefore, it is worthwhile studying this, right? Still, there's a gap, right? Very relevant because of it is uh, because of the significance of the research area. More people have done research, right? So therefore, so you also uh, uh, do another research, right? So what formats are useful for arranging the review literature, right? So what is mean by criticism? So right. So your thesis may be subject to criticism due to various reasons, right? What is mean by criticism? How can you be right fair by the criticism, right? How do you start to write the literature surveys, right? So these are some uh, um, issues or some feelings of the students, right? So the review and the research proposal, the first time you will do literature survey when you submit your research proposal, right? When you write your literature research proposal, you have to at least cite some literature and read some literature and see whether the research questions already answered, right? So one of the main reasons in writing the review is to, in the proposal for the research is to, right? The research you intend to do, right? So this means that your review of literature must provide methodological rationalization for your research, and you need to demonstrate that you understand history of the subject, right? So you have to demonstrate you know the history of the subject. If you don't know the history of the subject, the historical evolution of the subject, sometimes you cannot develop a very good research problem or research questions, right? Historical perspective. You can establish a historical perspective into your research if you do a literature survey, right? So you have to show uh, that you know the subject, right? So you are competent person to write on the subject, right? If you don't know, right, about the subject, you are not a competent person to write on the subject. If I write a paper on medicine, so no one will believe, no one will accept my conclusion, right? So therefore, so you have to narrow down, or you have to explore, or you have to, even you can have a section, right, to write the historical evolution of the topic, right? Then examiners will, right, get an understanding that the student has very good knowledge and he is competent person to write on this, right? So that is important, right? So demonstrating the competency always important in the thesis, right? Uh, so how to write the methodological story of the previous studies, right? So knowledge-based elements, right? Uh, I skip this since argumentation elements, description of what you find wrong in previous work, a proposal, right? So to action, proposal for action that might solve the problem in your thesis, right? So argumentational elements, under that you have to describe. So this current knowledge is wrong. So you have to give with evidences, right? Without evidences, you cannot say, so the knowledge is wrong, right? Previous knowledge is wrong, right? With facts, right? You have to always support with facts. If you say current knowledge is wrong, then also you have to propose, right? So you have to propose an action to overcome or solve the problem, right? Just highlighting the or telling it is wrong, it's not sufficient, right? It's not also ethical, right? So you should be able to give a solution, propose a solution, argumentational elements, right? Right, justify, right. So criticism, you can criticize, uh, agreeing with or defending a position, right? Confirming its usefulness through an evaluation, strength and weaknesses, right? So you can you can agree with, or you can very constructively criticize, no issue, right? So sometimes very good, very famous authors, right? They have written and they have concluded, right? They have given some conclusions which are which are wrong, totally wrong, but right? So we cannot totally ignore, right? A lot of people in subsequent studies, subsequent researchers, they have, right, criticized previous studies in a very constructive way, right? So you have to, right? So this is totally wrong, right? So Dayaratne has done a research in 2010, which is utterly wrong, right? So don't say that in that way, right? So you have to, right, uh, very politely, right? Uh, so you can criticize, right? So criticism allowed, no issue, right? You can criticize others' work very constructively, right? Selecting elements from existing arguments and reformulating them. So them to form a synthesis, a new point of view on some subject matter, right? So then based on the previous arguments, so you can develop or synthesize your own work, right? Uh, that's also the one of the objectives of literature service, synthesizing your own work, right? Uh, how to avoid criticisms in your work, right? So your thesis may be subject to criticism due to various reasons, right? How to avoid? You can avoid. So you will be expected not to violate standards and values of academic work, right? How your thesis may be subject to criticisms, falsifications, that is falsification, sloppiness, nepotism, and plagiarism, right? Misrepresenting the work of others, right? So when you paraphrase, so you read the text and you paraphrase in your own words, right? And you put the citations, right? That's correct, no issue. But thing is, you have brought forward wrong message, right? Misrepresenting the work, right? If you misinterpret my work, right? So that is violation of copyright also, right? So you are violating copyright because you are manipulating my work, my idea, and right, maybe because you are incompetence, you cannot read and understand. If you cannot read and understand, you cannot paraphrase, right? So first thing is, if you cannot read and understand, don't paraphrase and don't write on your thesis, right? Read once, twice, and right. So read several times and understand the text, or if you can understand, take it to supervisor and ask to your supervisor to read for you and cite. Don't bring right wrong message or misinterpret the previous knowledge. That is violation of copyright also, right? That is falsifications, right? Uh, and sloppiness, not providing correct citations. So sometimes your publication incorrect, authors, right? Or sometimes, right? If you have uh, 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 put some quotations wrong, right? So that is sloppiness. So deportation, citing references and colleges that are not directly related to your work, right? So for the sake of right, uh, increasing the number of citations, what you do is whatever you get, you society, those are not relevant, right? So that is nepotism, right? Irrelevant articles have been cited in the thesis, right? That is, then your thesis will be subject to criticism. And plagiarism, the act of knowing, all right? So you know you read others' work and you pass it as yours, your work. That is plagiarism, all right? So your thesis will be subject to criticism if you do these. Avoid these, right? Right. So how to manage time and writing problem? You may have some problems, right? Causes and solutions. You may have problem, writing problem, but there are some solutions also. So lack of time is the very common complaint by the students, right? Especially part-time. But full-time, you have enough time, but still you can manage time, right? So during your 6 months period, you can convince your friends and others. So I am writing my thesis. Don't disturb. Don't you invite me for parties or night outing and all. So can manage time, right? Uh, right. Common mistakes do not clearly relate the findings, right? First time now. Okay. Uh, right. So common mistake, right? Mistakes commonly made in reviewing literatures. So does not clearly relate the findings of the literature to researchers on study. Always, right? Don't put citations in isolation. Always you have to contextualize the previous studies with your research problem or research, right? So always you have to relate previous studies with your research, right? Don't uh, put the citation in, or leave the citations in isolation, right? Does not take sufficient time to define the best descriptors and identify best sources, right? Relies on secondary sources rather than primary. So this is very, I have seen very often in theses submitted by the students. So they rely on the secondary sources. It's okay, academically okay, no issue, but try to get the original source because they have cited to address their research problem or research questions, right? So if you say as cited by Dayaratne, I have put the I have paraphrased the original paper in my context, right? To suit into my context. Then if you use the secondary citation, what happens? You will bring it to your, right? But so you have to get the original paper and then, right, paraphrase according to your research, right? So therefore, don't rely on secondary sources. My advice is don't rely on secondary sources. So you can find the original source, right? So the internet is available, right? So critically assess, right? Another researchers' findings and interpretation as don't accept as it is others' knowledge, what others have concluded, right? Don't accept as it is, right? Have critical eye rather than examining critically, right? So critically evaluate, right? So so these are common mistakes, right? Done by the students, right? Uh, and does not report the search. So you have to inform the examiners the hardships you have undergone during your review, right? How difficult it was, right? The extent of work done, right? Or to compile my literature chapter, right? So then, so the examiners will get a positive view on your work, right? So right? How hard you have worked, right? So reporting your thesis. Some students, what they do a lot of things, right? They go to especially when they collect data, they go to the field and they undergo a lot of sufferings, right? So report all the suffering. So those also will be positive things for you because examiners get a view that this even though there are some few mistakes, student has worked hard, student has struggled to, right, submit the thesis, right? So report all this in the thesis, right? And reports isolated statistical results rather than synthesizing or high scatter. So, right? So this also you report statistical tables in isolations without synthesizing, right? And does not consider country findings. Always, right? Consider country findings and alternative interpretation in synthesizing quantitative literature, right? So what are the country findings? and then interpretations, right? So those are common mistakes done by the students, right? Uh, right. So this is yeah. We started with the topic, so right. So you have to first define the topic, then narrow down topics, then you have to plan the literature survey, then what are the databases available and how, what search terms you, right, after defining the topic. So you decide search terms, right? And then you start the search, right? Then how to search, right? And how to write your literature, right? Uh, so we focus on these areas. Yes, that's all literature. I don't know any question. Hello.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I have. I don't. There's a part. I have. Is it time enough? We have enough time. Oh, we can.
Yes, sir. You can utilize if you want another like 15
Because
to
you
20
wanted me
minutes,
to
sir.
discuss plagiarism also. It won't take much time
Okay, sir. Okay, right.
because it goes hand in hand. Literature review and plagiarism goes hand in hand, right? So this is very important, right? Plagiarism, the original or innovative, right? Not every piece of student work must be innovative, right? No need to be innovative, right? However, it must be original, right? It must be original, right? So you should not revolutionize the world with your findings, right? So that means that the submitted work was really written by the student and he or she does not claim the work of others, so right? So therefore, uh, uh, it should be original, right? It mustn't be innovative, right? No need to take innovative approach, right? It's good, but it should be original work, right? Uh, then right. So what is plagiarism? So in colleges or in universities, we are continually engaged with other people's ideas, right? So we rely on other people's, what is spoken by other people, what is right, written by other people, the lectures delivered by other people's, and or the speeches delivered in the conferences, right? So we rely on all these sources. So as a result, it is very important that we have to give credit where it is due always, right? So we have to give due credit where it is due. So what's plagiarism? Plagiarism is using others' work, ideas, and right words without clearly acknowledging the source of the information, right? So you cannot put or the past others' work as yours in your thesis. That is plagiarism. That is right. Not allowed by the university. Also, it is not accepted by the academic community, right? So you have to acknowledge, right, previous knowledge or previous sources, right? The sources that you uh, mm, use in your thesis, right? So there are two types of plagiarism: intentional, you right, unintentional. So intentional, you purposely copy, right? So you borrow copying from a friend, right? So you borrow your thesis from your friend and you copy it. That is wrong, right? So buying or borrowing, cutting and pasting block of text, right? So you cut and paste block of text. You read an article, you get one page and copy and paste, and you put the citations, right? And is it correct? No. right? So you have put the acknowledgement, but you have extensively, right? We call extensive citation, right? Extensively, copying extensively also intentional plagiarism, right? Cutting and pasting blocks of text from the electronic sources. So media borrowing. So you borrow without documentations, web publishing without permissions, right? So if you are developing a web page, for example, as an assignment, so you have to get the written consent. In some cases, so you have to get written consent, right? So if you want to get some pictures into your thesis, right? So which are copyrighted, right? So putting citation not sufficient, or putting acknowledgement not sufficient. So you have to get the written consent then, right? If not, you will be liable for copyright infringement, right? So putting citation is always not right. Uh, Academic writing, of course, you can put the citation, but in sometime in your thesis, if you use copyrighted material, right, you have to be careful, right? And what is intentional? So careless paraphrasing, you have carelessly paraphrase, right? Because you cannot read and understand this and you carelessly paraphrase, right? Or you bring a wrong message. So you wrongly interpret the others' ideas. That is also intent, right? Poor documentation because lack of your experience and quoting extensively, get one page and right paste into your text and put the citation. So right. So according to the guideline, correct, because you have put the citation, right? But you have copy and paste entire, right? Text, that is, you have not paraphrase, right? So failure to use your own voice because you have not been blended during these 4 years. You have not attended lectures, you have not attended literature survey lecture series, right? So you have not written your assignments, then you are not academically competent enough to do a research, then you will, right? So failure to you write or your voice, then you will plagiarize. But so you have some students' point of view. As students, you have some excuses. These are not our excuses, right? From our point of view, these are not excuses, right? So anyone does it. Why shouldn't I do this, right? So last time also one student did and copied and he got A pass. Then I also do the same, right? That is no. So right. So you will be caught, right? You will be caught, right? So the consequences will be very right, painstaking consequences, right? Um, and then it was too busy to write that paper, right? Because of your other commitments. So right, those are not excuses for us, right? And my parents expect an A grade for the thesis, therefore I should copy and I should submit a good thesis, right? And you submit, right? Plagiarized work. I have got into use your partner expect you to perform well, get an A pass, right? Then what you do is you copy and submit because you will. So your partner is very talented student, then you have to show or pretend that I am also talent. What you do is you copy and submit, right? And my teachers expect too much, yes, so, right? Teachers think that I am a very clever student. Then, right, you copy. And it's a boring topic. You have chosen boring topic. Always select a topic in your interest. Right? If you are not interested in the topic, you will tend to plagiarize, right? So you get boring with the topic and you will, right? You won't write well, right? So it should be your own topic. Don't try to borrow topic from your supervisor. Students are coming to me and asking for topics, right? So this is your own research. It should be your own interest, right? Therefore, don't try to get the topic from your supervisor. Supervisor only will guide you to further fine tune your topic and put it into correct path, but don't ask a topic from because this is your inquiry, your curiosity. So you have some issues. So you are seriously thinking of one topic. So then that will be your top research topic, right? Don't borrow topic from your supervisor. And what makes the students plagiarizing? Academic incompetence, you have not followed lectures. Flexible faculty standard, faculty is not bothering about. There's no any guidelines or standards given to the students, consequences of plagiarisms, right? There's no any guideline. The students, right, tend to plagiarize. Supervisor is not serious. Supervisor says, so everything you brought to the supervisor, he will agree, right, keep on, right, going on, go on, no issue at all, right? And supervisor is not bothering about the plagiarism. Then you will copy and show your write up to your supervisor, right? And inability to meet the deadline. Sometimes so deadline is next week. Still you are in the third chapter, right? So you have to know, right? No time to do your right. Other rest of the what you do is you right browse the internet and get a thesis and modify names and other things and some make some changes and submit it, right? So inability to meet the deadlines, right? So you will be given limited time to do all these literature survey, data collection, analysis, so to meet your supervisor and do the progress review. So within 6 months, right? Don't waste your time, right? Uh, during the thesis writing or during this process, right? So ignorance of consequence, you don't know what consequences you will face if you are caught for plagiarizing, right? And getting higher grade, of course, inability to get the credit because sometimes the available it is in public domain. It is in public domain, so very easily you can get it, but it is copyrighted, protected, right? So even though you are accessible to it, right, the material, so you cannot use it without the consent, right? So you have made an attempt to get the consent, but they have not given the consent to use it in your test, but it is available, right? So uh, that is also one reason for plagiarizing, right? And what is the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing? So you, right? So when you reduce or condense the information, that is summarizing, right? And what is paraphrasing? So when you repeat the information in your own words in about the same length, right? Same length, number of words as authors, you are paraphrasing, right? Same length, right? Maybe 10 words, maybe what you paraphrase also may have 10 words, 11 words, and so on, right? Uh, so what you have to practice or familiar with is paraphrase, right? So in the literature chapter, you have to paraphrase. How can the students avoid plagiarism? To avoid plagiarism, you give credit whenever you use, right, other person's ideas, opinions, and theories. You have to acknowledge the facts, statistic, graphs, drawings, any piece of information that are not common knowledge, right? That are not common knowledge, right? So, and quotations of another person's actual spoken written words, right? Paraphrase of other person's spoken or written words, right? So what is common knowledge? So known by available in every places and known by several people. That is common knowledge. No need to cite, right? No need to cite. No need to acknowledge uh, things which are in common knowledge, right? So this is one example how to paraphrase, how to recognize acceptable and unacceptable paraphrasing, right? So here is one text borrowed from William Juice William, 1819. Here is the original text from page one of Lewis Broad, right? A case book of family and crime in 1890s by Williams, right? So this is the test, right? So first thing is if you cannot understand the test, don't paraphrase. Don't try to paraphrase. First, try to understand. Read it several times. Try to understand. If you cannot understand the text, if you are going to paraphrase what happens, so you will bring forward wrong message, wrong idea. That is violation of copyright, right? So violation. So because you are manipulating others' ideas, right? So therefore, read and understand. What is this? The rise. What is so this test is about what what this text is about uh, the rise of industry, the growth of cities, and the expansion of population were the three great developments in late 19th century uh, Americans history, right? As new large steam-powered factories became a feature of America landscape, in the East, they transformed farmhands into industrial labor and provided jobs for rising tide of immigrants. So with industry came urbanization, the growth of large cities like Fall River, Massachusetts, where Bordens lived, which became the centers of production as well as commerce and trade. So this is the text, original text. So now you are going to paraphrase this. How, right? First, so you have to make sure you got the point, you got the idea. So this, what this passage is about, right? What this passage is about. So this passage is about industrial revolution, right? So you should be able to understand that. So the author has written about the industrial revolutions. Farmers became industrial labor, and then they migrated to cities. Then as a result, some cities emerged, right? And then so those cities were the industrial hub. That is the core, right, argument or the of the text. You have to grab the core argument, right, by reading several times and understand the text and write in your own words. So that is paraphrasing, right? That is paraphrasing. So how you write in your own words? So this is unacceptable paraphrase. What the student has done is, he has got the text and he has used some synonyms, right? He has used some synonyms, increase, factors, companies, waves, tide, in place of tide, waves, fall, rivers, right? So he has, right? And also he has not cited. Why this passage? So what makes this passage plagiarism? Because of two reasons. The writer has only changed around few words, right? Or and phrases, right? And change the original sentence, right? The writer has not acknowledged, right? Failed to cite the source, right? So because of these two reasons, this is plagiarized work, right? Here is an acceptable paraphrase. So you can see, so the student has grabbed the idea, right? Argument, and he has written his uh, own words in the same length. Same is right? Not exactly, right? Same length, and given the citations, right? Given the acknowledged, right? The Fall River where born family lived was typical of northern industrial cities of the 19th century. Steam-powered production had shifted to labor from agriculture to manufacturing, and immigrants arrived to US. They found work in these new factories and so on, right? So very nicely, right? So a student has written in his own word, establishing the original argument, right? So you have to make sure that not change, right? Not only changing the words, but also you have to make sure that so you are not manipulating the idea, right? If you are manipulating the idea, it's serious case. So we'll go to the court and get an action. Not the you will get a fail grade. That is another matter. But right, in addition to that, you have to go to court and face legal trials in the court, right? So be careful, right? So what this passage why accurately relies on the information original and use the own words, right? And also the let's reader know the source of information, right? This is also acceptable. So you can put both quotations, and if you want, you can borrow the same words from the original text within quotation. Right? So when you paraphrase, so in this right in the paragraph you can have both. So so what you have borrowed, what you have got from the original source should be quoted. All right. You can see. So you have borrowed some words, transform farmhands into industrial laborers. So you have right within quotations. So you can do that, and then the balance, the rest of writing, you are writing, and again you right, which became the centers of production as well as commerce and trade within quotation. Right, William and page 1890 and page number 1. So this is also correct, right? So you can get direct, get the word, set of words or sentences and put within quotation, right? Don't put entire sentence and put quotations. That is extensive quotation, right? That is wrong, right? That is wrong. Right, acceptable, what is why it is acceptable? Even your work, right? Say, for example, you have published a paper last year. So you are reading your paper and you want to use your findings. Even though it is you have to put your site. Even if the writer writes in her own text sources, right? Because it is not yours, right? Copyright goes to the publisher, right? Even though your paper, you have only the authorship, right? So the copyright is with the publisher, right? It is no, even though it is you are not you cannot claim the ownership or copyright, right? So WW sources, so you will very often you will borrow or you will get some articles. Then you have to put according to the APA style, latest version, APA 7 is available, I think 7 or 8, yeah, maybe latest, right? So you can cite as recommended by APA style, right? And yes, so strategies for avoiding plagiarism, put quotations, everything that comes directly from the text, right? Paraphrase. But be sure you are not just rearranging and replacing the word. And check yourself, your paraphrase again. Before you submit, you read it again and check whether you have uh, uh, used the same words from the original text. Right? And so common knowledge, you know how to identify common knowledge, the facts that can be found in numerous places and known by several people, right? Mr. US President, Mr. Trump is, right? US President, everyone knows that, right? So no need to cite. This is generally known, right? Information, right? So, however, you must document facts that are not generally known and ideas that interpret facts, right? Uh, Using one's words, when you quote, place the passage you are using quotation marks, you know that, and document the source according to the standard document style, right? Right, paraphrase. Some clues. Read the text carefully and make sure you understand the text. Don't paraphrase if you can understand the text, right? And go. So in first reading you can't understand. Go away and come again and sit and read it again, right? Take some time, no issue, right? And return to write without looking. So without looking, don't look at the original text, right? If you look at, you will use the same uh, words, right? So make sure to change grammar and vocabulary as necessary. Check to see differences in words and grammar, right? And is this plagiarism? So you are a member of the audience where research results are presented. right? So you use the idea described by one of the speaker, right? So plagiarism, right? So if you're using without acknowledging, that is plagiarism. So you are reading a journal article or book chapter, you paraphrase passages of text from the material you have been reading in the literature review or manuscript, right? So what happens is, say, for example, when journals, uh, editors, they send their papers for review, right? For example, I got a paper for the review. What I do is I reject the paper and then I get the idea and I write the paper and I publish it somewhere. That is also plagiarism, right? That is also academic crime, right? It's academic dishonesty, right? But that happens among the academic community, right? So you are, yes, this is what I want to say, right? You are reviewing a submitted transcript. You decide to use the novel idea. You use your idea. You use others' idea. You reject the paper. So when you get it for review, you reject it and you get the good idea. You publish a paper. That is right. Plagiarism and academic crime, not accepted, right? Right. So, and you are doing research using internet, choosing your ideas and from the web design and right. So, is this plagiarism? You are writing a paper in English, right? And your native language is Sinhala. So when writing a review of literature, you use it, right? How? So you are referring in this article and you are writing in Sinhala, and then how to paraphrase, right? No matter, you have to establish the meaning, real argument, right? Real meaning of the text. It is plagiarism. You are writing a manuscript and publishing that is based upon your previous works, right? Even though it is your work, you have to cite it, right? Acknowledge. So these are some consequences, so you will be expelled from the program if you are caught with plagiarism, and legal action if you are using copyrighted materials without the consent. So right, so then copyright owners will file an action against you. So very straightforward punishment is fail grade, and disciplinary acts referral. You will be referred to this disciplinary board and suspended, and you will be blacklisted among the academic community. So those are consequences of plagiarism, right? So academic offense, serious offense, plagiarism. So there are, but still, so we can detect very easily. There are some softwares, right? And then so the faculty will ask you to submit the soft copy in Word form to check plagiarism, right? So you will be caught, right, if you plagiarize. So that's all. Now, okay, I have taken more time. Any question? Hello? No questions?
Sir, we received hope you can hear me, sir.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, sir. There were two questions in the Q&A forum, but already you provided answers while you conducting the session, sir.
Oh, I see. Good. Then there's more questions, you can conclude.
Okay, sir. Then we'll go with the rest of the proceedings. It seems no questions, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to the distinguished guest and the respected audience. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of Accountancy and Finance, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka for the successful completion of the third session of the Thesis Mastery Program 2025. First and foremost, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the main speaker of today's session, Professor D.A.I. Dayaratne, from the Department of Accountancy and Finance, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. Sir, it was indeed an inspiring and enlightening session. At the outset, I would like to express my profound gratitude to the Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka, headed by Professor Athula Jnanapala. Further, I would like to express my special gratitude to Professor Ushan Piris, Head, Department of Accountancy and Finance, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. His visionary approach and dedication played a vital role in initiating this kind of a program. I would also like to express our sense of obligation to Professor Jayantha Devasiri, the main coordinator of this program. Fully grateful for the organizing committee, Ms. Shanika, Ms. Lakmini, Ms. Rashmi, Mr. Sajit and Mr. Dakshina, who meticulously planned and executed. Finally, I would like to sincerely thank the audience, including academics, researchers, and the research students for their active participation. Hope you all will join us for the fourth session of the Thesis Mastery Program on Research Design and Methodology, Choosing the Right Design for Qualitative Research by Professor Rangana Shalika, Department of Tourism Management, Faculty of Management Studies, Sabaragamuwa University of Sri Lanka. Thank you all again. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you. Good night.